Hey, what's going on, everybody? In this video, we're going to do a review of The Sea Wolves, A History of the Vikings by Lars Brownworth. And if you guys don't know, Lars Brownworth is pretty famous, or pretty well known, I guess, for his podcast, I believe 12 Rulers of Byzantium, or something like that. I think he has some others as well, and you should definitely go check them out if history podcasts are your thing. And I think because of that, he wrote a couple books, and I believe this one is one of his latest ones. And I've been just reading a lot about the Vikings lately, so I had bought it maybe a month or two ago, so I definitely decided just, time to read it. Alright, I was originally fairly skeptical because it's only about 250 pages, plus the type is fairly big font, so I thought maybe it wasn't going to cover as much as it could, and that was partly the case. It definitely, I wouldn't say skimmed over topics, but you definitely could have, or a lot of topics definitely could have been treated a lot more thoroughly. But I do love the way this book was set up. He has it in, I believe, three or four sections. He has the raiders, the explorers, the traders, and the homelands. And each of those sections has a few chapters discussing that topic at hand. And I felt that it was definitely structured pretty neatly. He basically takes a place and goes chronologically through the whole history of that area, such as, Iceland, or the raids in France, or something like that. And he pretty much covers that all the way through, rather than trying to, you don't have, for example, a whole history of, the Vikings during the 9th century, because that definitely gets all over the place, especially how, wide-ranging the Vikings were. One nitpicky thing was that his bibliography is pretty lackluster. It's like one page, and it's not really cited in the book. It's just, a list of resources that he used. But to compensate for this, he has really good footnotes, even though they're not in-text citations per se. They're on the same page that the footnote is, and it's just it's an actual footnote in the sense that it's a comment on, explaining something more thoroughly that was in the narrative itself. So that was good. I felt that there was some places where he was a little bit too lenient with the source material and accepting kind of what they said at face value. He does try to shadow it a little bit, saying, at the end of a whole section, but these are, legends and stuff. But especially with, I think, Ragnar Lothbrok and the Landnámabók, which is the book of the land takers and the settlement of Iceland. I felt he was just a little too accepting of just going along with what those narratives stated. But other than that, I did think he did a pretty good job, even though it is a fairly condensed, short book. Some topics I felt he did really well were the Swedes and the eastern area of Viking exploration, or I wouldn't say conquest, but the eastern fringes of the Viking Age, such as the foundation of Kiev and Rus, and the dealing with the Byzantine emperors and that sort of thing. He also had a really good chapter on Harald Hardrada, who is my favorite Viking, so that was definitely a plus. And he also deals with Canute's, the Great Northern Empire, really well as well. So I thought that was cool, because some of those topics are just kind of brushed over because that's towards the end of the Viking Age. So sometimes Canute and Harald Hardrada in that area, that era in the 11th century sort of just gets swept under the rug, or just quickly glossed over. Oh, also, before I forget, also one of the last nitpicky things that I didn't like about the book was there was no index at the end, which is just kind of weird for a history book, especially with a lot of place names and proper names. So it was just kind of weird not having an index. But other than that, I still think it did a pretty good job being a shortish book on the history of the Vikings. For that, I'm going to give The Sea Wolves by Lars Brownworth a 4 out of 5 stars as well. And always remember, read victoriously.